As the global tech landscape continues to evolve, the intricate relationship between the United States and China remains a focal point of concern, particularly in the context of rare earth elements. These critical materials are essential for the production of a wide range of technologies from smartphones to renewable energy systems, making the dynamics of their trade increasingly significant in the ongoing geopolitical tensions between the two superpowers. Recent statements from Chinese Vice President Zheng have underscored the precarious state of U.S. China relations, describing them as being at a critical juncture. In a global economy increasingly reliant on collaboration, Han emphasized that mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and cooperation are essential for both nations and for global development. These remarks came following informal discussions aimed at finding common ground, reflecting a shared recognition of the need to engage despite rising tensions. Analysts suggest that such dialogues are crucial as both countries navigate the complexities of trade, technology, and diplomacy. The rare earth market is particularly emblematic of this tension. The U.S. has historically been dependent on Chinese supplies for these materials, which has raised national security concerns. The Biden administration has been vocal about the need to diversify supply chains in the wake of trade disputes. As noted in a recent analysis, the U.S. cannot simultaneously regard China as an adversary while relying on it for critical resources. This sentiment reflects a growing urgency among U.S. policymakers to establish a more independent stance on rare earth procurement, pushing for investments in domestic mining and processing capabilities. The stakes are high as China dominates the production of these materials, controlling approximately 60% of the global supply. Any disruption in this supply chain could have far-reaching consequences for industries reliant on rare earths. In a recent statement, a senior official highlighted that the geopolitical maneuvering surrounding rare earths is not merely about resources, it is about technological supremacy. The implications of this resource dependency extend beyond economics. They encompass national security and technological innovation, making the rare earth elements a strategic asset in the U.S.-China rivalry. As dialogues continue, the absence of direct communication between top leaders such as former President Trump and President Xi Jinping raises questions about the future trajectory of U.S.-China relations. The challenges in facilitating such talks may hinder the potential for constructive engagement on trade issues, including those concerning rare earths. Analysts are watching closely for any developments that might signal a thaw in relations, especially as both nations face common challenges such as climate change and global economic instability. Looking ahead, the global tech industry must brace for a future shaped by these geopolitical tensions. The push for self-sufficiency in critical materials may lead to increased investments in alternative sources and technologies, with countries seeking to establish more resilient supply chains. As the U.S. and China navigate this complex landscape, the outcomes of their negotiations and strategies regarding rare earths will undoubtedly influence technological advancements and economic stability for years to come. The world will be watching as these developments unfold, hoping for a path toward cooperation rather than conflict. In a landscape increasingly defined by geopolitical tensions, the United States auto industry is sounding alarms over the ramifications of China's recent restrictions on rare earth exports. The Motor and Equipment Manufacturers Association (MEMA), representing numerous auto parts suppliers, has called for urgent action as these curbs threaten to disrupt car production nationwide. With China controlling over 90% of the global supply of these critical minerals, which are vital for manufacturing motors and cameras, the stakes are high for American automakers, including industry giants such as General Motors, Ford, and Toyota. The backdrop to this urgent request is the escalating trade tensions between the U.S. and China, exacerbated by President Donald Trump's recent remarks about negotiating with Chinese President Xi Jinping. "It's extremely hard to reach a deal with my Chinese counterpart," Trump lamented on Truth Social, reflecting a growing frustration within the U.S. administration regarding the stalled trade talks. The fragile détente reached in mid-May, which saw both countries easing punitive tariffs, now appears to be under threat as accusations of violations of that agreement surface from both sides. As the U.S. pushes for a more robust trade dialogue, a letter was dispatched to international partners as a reminder that Trump's self-imposed moratorium on sweeping reciprocal tariffs is set to expire in early July. This has led to fears of a renewed escalation in trade hostilities, particularly as the administration has doubled tariffs on steel and aluminum from 25% to 50%, a move that took effect on June 4. The impact of these tariffs is already being felt across various sectors, prompting growing concern about their potential to stifle economic growth. In the automotive sector, the consequences are tangible. Ford has reportedly halted production of its Explorer SUV due to rare earth shortages, while other manufacturers such as Suzuki and Mercedes-Benz are scrambling to shore up supplies amid the restrictions. MEMA has echoed the urgency of the situation, stating in a Reuters report, immediate and decisive action is needed to prevent widespread disruption and economic fallout across the vehicle supplier sector. The implications of these trade tensions extend beyond the auto industry. Procter & Gamble announced plans to cut 7,000 jobs, or roughly 6% of its workforce, citing the need to rein in costs amid declining consumer demand and heightened expenses due to tariffs. Other companies, including Unilever, are experiencing similar pressures as consumer sentiment wanes under the weight of rising prices and supply chain disruptions. A recent analysis by the Congressional Budget Office indicated that Trump's tariffs could reduce the deficit by $2.8 trillion over the next decade, but would also lead to increased inflation, further straining household budgets. Globally, the ripple effects of these tariffs are fostering uncertainty. Reports indicate that Japanese officials are considering proposing enhanced cooperation with the U.S. on rare earth supply chains during upcoming tariff negotiations, a move reflective of broader concerns shared by many nations about China's tightening grip on these critical materials. Meanwhile, European businesses are lobbying for expedited approval processes for rare earth export licenses from China, emphasizing the need for stable and reliable supply channels to avoid further economic disruptions. As the U.S. navigates this challenging landscape, its approach to trade negotiations will be pivotal. The administration's plans to broaden restrictions on China's tech sector, including subsidiaries of companies under U.S. scrutiny, signal a continued hardline stance. With the July deadline for trade discussions looming, both the U.S. and its global partners are grappling with the potential fallout from Trump's tariff policies, which have already been criticized for sowing discord in the global market. In conclusion, as the auto industry and other sectors rally for intervention amid growing concerns over supply chain vulnerabilities, the future of U.S. China trade relations remains uncertain. The outcomes of ongoing negotiations could have far-reaching consequences not only for the U.S. economy but also for the global economic order. The coming weeks will be crucial in determining whether a path to resolution can be forged or whether the trade war will escalate, further impacting industries and consumers alike. In the shifting sands of global geopolitics, small nations often find themselves at the epicenter of monumental power struggles. Today, Namibia, a country rich in natural resources and strategically located along the Atlantic coast, occupies such a pivotal role. Amidst the escalating tensions of the U.S.-China trade war, Namibia's significance is magnified, as its uranium mines, ports, and burgeoning digital infrastructure become battlegrounds for influence between two global superpowers. As the West grapples with its waning presence in Africa, this young democracy faces a precarious future, caught in the crossfire of external ambitions and internal challenges. Namibia's economy is deeply intertwined with its abundant natural resources, particularly uranium, diamonds, and fish, with much of its exports directed to China, its largest trading partner. The relationship, however, is fraught with risk. As the U.S.-China trade war continues to disrupt global supply chains, Namibia's economic stability becomes increasingly vulnerable to Chinese market fluctuations. This dependency has left Namibia with little room to maneuver independently, as its reliance on Chinese demand for commodities threatens to undermine its economic sovereignty. Without deliberate American re-engagement, Namibia risks becoming a vassal state in China's broader economic empire, warns Christopher Jefferson Jensen, an analyst who has closely studied the issue.
China's influence in Namibia extends beyond trade. Under the Belt and Road Initiative (BRI), Chinese investments have financed critical infrastructure projects from highways to the bustling port of Walvis Bay. While these developments promise growth, they come with strings attached. The opaque nature of Chinese loans often leads to conditions that compromise Namibia's financial autonomy, as accumulating debt gives Beijing leverage over key national assets. Jensen argues that this strategy is a modern form of imperialism, asserting dominance not through military might but through financial entanglement. The upgrades at Walvis Bay, for instance, have improved its capacity significantly, but they also raise dual-use concerns. The same infrastructure supporting commerce could be repurposed for military operations, potentially shifting the balance of maritime power in the region and challenging U.S. interests. So far, Washington's response has been lackluster. Limited to diplomatic overtures and sporadic naval cooperation. Jensen cautions that failing to secure open access to maritime routes could result in ceding a strategic corridor to authoritarian control, with Namibia's port becoming a hub not just for trade but for military operations as well. The influence of Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei further complicates Namibia's situation. With significant control over the nation's digital infrastructure, Huawei poses risks related to surveillance and data security. The company's ties to the Chinese state raise alarms about the potential for data interception and intelligence vulnerabilities, threatening not just national security but civil liberties in Namibia's fledgling democracy. The reliance on such foreign technology has led to calls for the U.S. to offer alternatives, including support for indigenous technology and cybersecurity initiatives. Amid these challenges, Namibia has maintained a policy of non-alignment. Yet changes in political leadership could signal a shift in alliances. Newly elected President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, whose formative years were shaped by socialist ideologies, appears to be steering Namibia towards closer ties with BRICS nations, further distancing the country from Western influence. This pivot is concerning for the U.S. as it risks allowing China and Russia to dictate Namibia's policies and regional balance of power. As Namibia navigates this complex landscape, the stakes for Western powers are high. The country's uranium resources, crucial for both energy and geopolitical leverage, have increasingly fallen under Chinese control. The acquisition of significant stakes in Namibia's uranium mines by Chinese state-owned enterprises illustrates a deliberate strategy to harness these vital resources. For the U.S., the imperative is clear: without active engagement in Namibia, it risks losing a critical ally and the ability to influence the future of global energy dynamics. The moral obligation for the U.S. extends beyond mere strategic interest. It involves a commitment to supporting Namibia's sovereignty and democratic institutions. By fostering transparent trade practices, investing in local infrastructure, and offering fair military cooperation, the U.S. can help Namibia emerge as a strong independent player in the global arena. The example of the Millennium Challenge Corporation's compact with Namibia, which emphasized development without political strings, illustrates a pathway for constructive engagement that respects Namibia's autonomy. Looking ahead, the next few years will be crucial for Namibia as it grapples with the dual pressures of external influence and internal governance. The U.S. must respond decisively to the growing Chinese presence by fortifying its relationships in the region. With proactive measures ranging from technological investment to military cooperation, America can help Namibia resist the tide of dependency on authoritarian regimes and reclaim its strategic agency. As Namibia stands at this crossroads, the question remains: will Washington rise to the occasion and meet Namibia's needs with tangible support, or will it continue to watch from the sidelines as another nation succumbs to the allure of authoritarian partnerships? The outcome will not only define Namibia's future but could also reshape the balance of power in southern Africa and beyond.